After the surgery, I developed some issues with my hands as a painter. Meanwhile, my wife was in the hospital room with someone who was hostile toward me. In the end, she begged me to forgive her. However, there was no way we could ever be together again. My left hand remained numb. The attending physician said that nerve recovery would take time, but I knew that this hand might never hold a paintbrush again. I used to work as an animator at an animation studio, or rather, I used to. On the third day of my hospitalization, the studio's partner, Christopher, sent me an email informing me that due to my inability to continue working on the Starry project, they regrettably had to terminate our collaboration. Christopher was the animation director my wife Olivia had once idolized, and he was also her first love. I stared at the phone screen for a long time before finally replying with a single word. Okay, actually, I should have known that I couldn't continue with this project, so it was only natural that they asked me to step down. The hospital room door opened, and Olivia walked in carrying a thermos. She had put on makeup today, and her hair was neatly combed, looking completely different from the exhausted appearance she had had over the past month. "Are you awake? I brought you some porridge." Her voice was light and cheerful, but her gaze kept drifting toward the door. I knew who she was waiting for. Sure enough, Christopher appeared at the door shortly after. "Olivia, the storyboards for Xingqian have been revised. Come take a look." Olivia stood up immediately. "Okay, let's go to the office to discuss it." She didn't even glance at me before turning and leaving. "Wait," I said, "could you please get the painkillers from the bedside table for me?" Olivia seemed to remember, grabbed the bottle and placed it by my side, saying, "Take it yourself. We have work to discuss." Watching their departing figures, I smiled helplessly. Since I'd been hospitalized, Olivia had come every day, but she never stayed longer than 10 minutes. She always said she had to work, but she always left with Christopher. We'd been married for 3 years, and I thought I knew her well. It wasn't until Christopher returned to her life that I realized how ridiculous I was as a replacement. Just then, my phone rang. It was my university professor calling. "Alex, I heard you were injured. What happened exactly?" I briefly mentioned the surgery. The professor fell silent for a moment, then said, "I have an opportunity for you. A well-known animation studio in Country C is looking for a concept artist with a 2-year contract. If you're interested, I can recommend you." I gripped the phone tightly, but my hand. Before I could finish, my mentor interrupted. "The neurology department there is excellent. It might help with your recovery. Plus, a change of environment could be good for you." "Thank you, sir," I said. "Can I have a few days to think about it?" After hanging up, I stared out the window, feeling a sense of emptiness. A month ago, the studio was still working hard to meet the deadline for Starry Sky. That day, I stayed up all night editing the storyboard to show Christopher the next day. But when I walked into the office, I heard arguing coming from the conference room. "Unbelievable. This storyboard is completely different from what I wanted." Christopher's voice was loud. "At this rate, I might as well do it myself." "Christopher, calm down. Olivia is speaking. Alex has already done his best. This is unprofessional. How dare you present this?" I pushed open the door and saw Christopher about to throw my storyboard on the ground. Olivia stood beside him, seeming to want to say something but unable to find the words. I walked over and picked up the notebook. Christopher sneered. "Discussion? Do you have the qualifications to discuss with me? If it weren't for Olivia's connections, do you think I'd let you be part of this project?" I couldn't help but clench my fists. "All right, since Director Christopher thinks I'm not suitable, I'll step down." As I was about to leave, Christopher called out to me. "Wait," he said. It was company property. I turned around and threw the book on the table. Who knew the book slid off the edge of the table and knocked over the coffee cup next to it. The hot coffee spilled onto Christopher's hand, and he yelped, stepping back a few steps, only to bump into the equipment rack behind him. I instinctively rushed over to steady the swaying rack, but the monitor on top crashed down with a loud thud. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself lying in a hospital bed. The attending physician told me that the nerves in my left hand were injured, and if I didn't undergo surgery promptly, I might lose all sensation in it. During the time I was unconscious, Olivia had been taking care of Christopher's burns. I heard that from that day on, she started helping me with work on her own initiative, discussing storyboards with Christopher every day. Looking back now, perhaps the accident with the coffee cup had inadvertently given them an opportunity to reconcile. When the nurse came in to change my bandages, I asked her for a piece of paper and a pen. Seeing my crooked handwriting, I couldn't help but smile wryly. I used to be most proud of my drawing skills, but now I can't even write properly. However, this resignation letter must be written by me personally. In the evening, Olivia stayed in the ward a little longer than usual. She was looking at her phone, occasionally glancing at me. "Why do you have time today?" I asked. "Christopher is on a business trip," she replied, adding that it was a work arrangement. I nodded. "I also had something to discuss with you." "What happened?" I pulled the resignation letter from under the pillow and said I had decided to work in Country C. Olivia froze and asked when this had happened. "The teacher mentioned a job opportunity today." I paused, then said, "Let's get a divorce." She suddenly stood up and asked, "Are you crazy? Just because I've been busy with work and haven't had time to take care of you?" I smiled bitterly and asked Olivia, "Are you really busy with work?" She stammered, "I'm sorry, I was just working. Can we talk about this properly?" I interrupted her. "There's no need to wait when I was injured and unconscious. You were taking care of another man. Every time you came to the hospital, you only stayed for 10 minutes before leaving. I saw it clearly. Let's just end it here." Olivia's tears were about to spill over. She said, "It's not like that. Please listen to me." I shook my head. "There's no need to say more over the past month. I've come to realize something. Rather than tormenting each other like this, it's better to say goodbye properly." Olivia bit her lip, and tears finally fell. "Do you really hate me that much you won't even give me a chance?" "A chance?" I gave a wry smile. "Over the past month, you only came to see me for a few minutes each day. Besides dropping off your lunch box, have you ever cared about my injury?" She was at a loss for words. "I've been so busy. You know how important Xinchen is to the studio." "Yes, important enough that you'd rather take care of Christopher's burns than spend a few extra minutes with me." Olivia grew anxious. "How can you say that? It was my fault you got hurt. I've felt guilty about it ever since, but the studio needs me to work. You need time alone with Christopher. You need to bring him coffee every day. Do you need to chat in the break room?" She froze. "How do you know?" "Everyone in the studio knows except me. I've just been lying to myself." At that moment, Olivia's phone rang. She glanced at it. It was a message from Christopher. I saw her fingers twitching, but she resisted and didn't open it. I pretended to be calm and said, "Don't keep him waiting too long." Olivia's tears flowed even more heavily. She said, "I'm sorry. I admit I still have feelings for him. But Alex, I truly loved you too." "Those 3 years," I interrupted her. "Enough. I don't want to hear it." I took a document from the bedside table. "The divorce agreement is already prepared. Take a look and see if there's anything you want to change." Olivia took the document but didn't open it. "Can we have some time? We can talk properly once you've recovered." "No, I'm very determined. I'm leaving the hospital the day after tomorrow and going straight there. The flight ticket is already booked." She looked at me in surprise and said, "Your hand. The doctor said you could work while undergoing treatment." Olivia remained silent for a moment before suddenly asking, "Did you already have this planned?" I gave a sarcastic laugh and said, "From the day I saw you hugging Christopher in the conference room." Her face turned pale. You saw it?" "I did," I said. "That day I had just finished surgery and the nurse told me you had come. I thought you finally remembered to come see me. I didn't expect." Olivia covered her face. "I'm sorry. I was really overwhelmed that day. Christopher said he was giving up on the stars and I couldn't control my emotions. So you went to rely on him. What a convenient excuse. I laughed. She grabbed my hand excitedly. I pulled away forcefully and told her if you keep this up, I'll have to reconsider. Hearing this, she immediately let go of my arm. I smiled softly. I knew it. Just then the ward door opened. Christopher stood at the door, looking rather pale. Olivia, why are you still here so late? Olivia quickly wiped away her tears and asked Christopher, weren't you supposed to be on a business trip? Christopher walked in with a meaningful tone and said, it was suddenly canceled. It seems I came back just in time. I watched the scene in silence. 3 years had passed, and every time Olivia saw Christopher, her eyes would betray her uncontrollable joy. I spoke up, saving myself the trip to the studio. This is my resignation letter. Christopher took the letter, glanced at it and noticed it mentioned going to Country C. He looked at Olivia, knowing that someone was going to be upset. Olivia blushed immediately. Christopher, I felt a bit queasy and vomited. Christopher's expression changed. What do you mean? I paused for a moment and replied, nothing in particular. Just a reminder not to let a woman who's willing to give everything for you down. You, Christopher clenched his fists. Olivia quickly grabbed him and said, Christopher, don't get angry. Alex is the patient, I smiled. See, you still care so much about him. Olivia's hand stopped and tears began to flow again. Christopher wrapped his arm around her shoulder and said, let's go. Don't bother with someone who can't handle losing, watching their departing figures. I closed my eyes, yet felt an unprecedented sense of peace within me. The next morning, I began the procedures to check out of the hospital. When I returned home to pack my things, I noticed that the art supplies in the study were exactly as I had left them. Even the pencils in the pencil holder hadn't been touched. It seemed that Olivia had indeed rarely come back over the past month. As I was about to pack the art supplies, I suddenly noticed an envelope tucked away in the back of the shelf. I opened it and found our wedding photo inside. Olivia was smiling brightly in the photo, making it hard to believe she had other things on her mind. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Olivia. She looked like she hadn't slept much, her eyes red. I came to get my things, she said. I stepped aside to let her in. Take whatever you want. I'm leaving soon. Olivia walked around the house, then stopped at the study door and said, throw away your art supplies. You won't need them anymore. She turned to me and asked, do you really have to do this? I didn't answer, just continued packing. She walked over and asked, Alex, can't we try again? I can quit my job and leave the studio. I looked up at her, then at my injured hand, thinking of Christopher. I interrupted her and said, Olivia, you know me. I can accept failure, but I can't handle being betrayed over and over again. She bit her lip and I gently pushed her away. There's no need to hesitate. You know who you love. Let's part ways amicably and not let our last memories become ugly. Life in Country C was much more fulfilling than I had imagined. The senior members of the studio were very concerned about me, especially Emily, who was responsible for mentoring me. She not only helped me find the best neurologist, but also often accompanied me to rehabilitation. She said my sense of touch was unique, though I couldn't fully control it yet. The lines I drew still had a certain flair. I was speechless. Since the accident, it was the first time anyone had praised me like that. Emily noticed I was lost in thought and smiled, asking what I was thinking about. I was wondering why I'd never heard such compliments before. She replied seriously, maybe they don't understand animation well enough. I smiled wryly, maybe I just haven't done a good enough job. No, she flipped through my sketchbook. Look at these storyboards. The composition is excellent, and the emotions are very delicate. This level of skill is rare in the industry. I didn't say anything. These storyboards were drawn during the Starry project. At the time, Christopher said they were childish and not worth mentioning. Emily seemed to sense my mood and whispered, good work doesn't need others' approval. They speak for themselves. I looked at her gentle profile and felt a wave of warmth in my heart. Here, I don't need to prove anything or please anyone. I just want to be myself. 2 years isn't a long time, but it's not short either. With Emily's help, my left hand gradually recovered, though I still can't draw freely. I can now complete basic storyboards. More importantly, I rediscovered my passion for animation. Emily always said that animation isn't about pleasing someone else. It's about telling the story from your heart. Her words reminded me of the past, when I would try to guess Olivia's preferences while drawing storyboards, worried that she wouldn't like them. Now, I just draw what I want to draw and I'm happy. As a result, my work has gained more recognition from others. At the same time, my relationship with Emily has been quietly changing. One day, I was working late, and she went out of her way to get me a cup of coffee. She reminded me to be careful not to burn myself and pushed the cup toward me. I was taken aback. Olivia had also brought me coffee before, but her eyes were always on Christopher's office. Emily's gaze, however, was fixed on me. What was happening? She asked me with concern. I shook my head. Nothing, I was just thinking about something. She smiled and urged me to leave those unhappy things in the past. Seeing her smile, I felt a sudden warmth in my heart. However, the good times didn't last long and the peaceful life was soon disrupted. One day, I received an email from a colleague back home, telling me that the movie had been released and was receiving positive reviews. I opened the trailer and saw the director's name, Christopher and Olivia, the original concept artist, but my name was gone, along with all the storyboards they had rejected. Emily walked over, noticed my expression, and asked if I was upset. I shook my head, finding it a bit amusing. She looked at the screen and asked, "Is this your previous work?" I replied, "Yes, but not exactly, although those storyboards were drawn by me. They had been completely transformed." Emily fell silent for a moment before asking, "Want to take a look at this?" She opened her computer and pulled up a folder. Inside were all the storyboards I had drawn over the past 2 years. "These are the real you," she said, "not the ones that were altered beyond recognition by others." Staring at the familiar scenes on the screen, I suddenly understood something. I had once believed I couldn't live without Olivia or that studio, but now I realized what truly kept me there was my initial passion for animation. Just then my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Alex, it's Olivia speaking." I couldn't help but glance at Emily, who was intently editing the storyboards. Seemingly unaware of my unusual behavior. "Is something wrong?" I stepped into the hallway. The stars were twinkling, and Olivia's voice was a bit choked up. "I think you already know." "Okay. I'm sorry, but Christopher insisted on doing this. He said that since you've already left, you shouldn't be using your storyboards anymore." I interrupted her, "So you agreed?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I didn't know how to respond. "Does it matter now? I regret it." "Alex," she suddenly burst into tears. "These past 2 years have been so painful for me. Christopher, enough," I said coldly. "You have to take responsibility for your own choices." "But, goodbye." I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. As I turned around, I saw Emily at the door, looking at me with concern. She asked if I was okay. She asked softly. I shook my head. "It's in the past." She walked over, said nothing, and gently held my hand. In that moment, I suddenly realized that some people's kindness doesn't need words to heal all the pain. Just then, a senior colleague from the studio found me and said, "Alex, there's good news. The International Animation Festival really liked your new work and wants to invite you back to the country for the award ceremony." I was speechless. This was the animated short film I had completed independently in Japan, telling the story of a painter who lost his inspiration and then found it again. I never expected that the things I had gone through would make this work recognized. On the flight back to the country, I began to reflect on the past 2 years. Before, I thought I could never pick up a pen again, but now I could draw smooth lines. I used to always try to please others, but now that passion has been replaced by a love for creation. I've become stronger, but not to prove anything to anyone. The award ceremony was held in the city where I used to work. As soon as I arrived at the hotel, I received a call from Mr. Thompson. "Alex, I heard you're coming to the animation festival. There's a dinner at the studio tonight. Why don't you join us?" I replied that I couldn't make it because I had other plans. Was it to avoid Olivia? Mr. Thompson sighed. "She broke up with Christopher." I remained silent for a moment. It wasn't my business. Christopher sold the copyright to Starlito other companies, including Olivia's work. I interrupted Mr. Thompson. Let the past stay in the past. After hanging up, I opened my computer to check my emails. A familiar name caught my eye. It was an email from my college classmate Emily. She asked if I'd heard I was returning to China to receive an award and inquired if I needed help with venue setup at the event. Seeing her name brought back memories of our college days. Back then, Emily was very dedicated. Every time I hit a roadblock while sketching storyboards, she'd quietly help me find reference materials. Later, to stay in the city where Olivia was, I turned down many opportunities. One day, Emily messaged me saying she was coming to visit and wanted to cheer me on together. Half an hour later, she appeared in the hotel lobby. It had been 2 years since we last saw each other, but she was still as capable as ever, just with a touch more maturity. "I've seen your new work. It's really great," she said while driving, especially the part where the male lead starts creating again, which reminded me of our university days. I was a bit surprised. "You still remember?" She laughed and said, "You used to stay up all night writing and I'd bring you midnight snacks. You always said you'd treat me to a big meal once you made it big." I felt a bit guilty for not staying in touch with her over the years. "I understand," she said. "Everyone has the right to make their own choices." When we arrived at the venue, Emily took me to check out the setup. As we walked past the exhibition area, I suddenly stopped in my tracks. On the opposite wall hung a poster of a starry night sky. "This exhibition area showcases some outstanding works from around the country," Emily explained. "But I think your storyboard version is better." I looked at her in surprise and asked, "How do you know?" "Because I saved the version you sent me earlier," she said seriously. "The visuals are full of soul, different from the current ones." Just then, a familiar voice rang out, "Alex." Olivia stood at the entrance of the exhibition area, looking tired but still full of anticipation. Emily glanced at me and kindly said she'd go check other areas. Then Olivia walked over and softly asked how I've been lately. I nodded, feeling okay. "I saw your new work," she started to say but stopped. "It's really great." I smiled lightly, thinking it wasn't as good as the popular pieces. Olivia's face turned pale and she said, "I'm sorry about the storyboard thing." I replied, "No need to apologize." I turned to leave. She grabbed my hand and said, "Wait, about Christopher." I asked, "What's wrong?" She said, "He hurt me. Did he think of me as a backup again?" Olivia's tears fell instantly, feeling wronged. The other person had taken all her work and said, "So now you know what it feels like to be betrayed." This was truly ironic. I pulled my hand back. At that moment, Emily rushed over and said, "The judging panel wants to see you to discuss the winning works." Olivia froze and Emily said casually, "You're old classmates. You're much more reliable." As I left, I heard Olivia's soft sobs, but I no longer felt any pain. On the day of the award ceremony, my work won the Best Original Award. The flashes from the cameras below kept flashing, and I saw Christopher sitting in the front row. His face was dark, probably not expecting that the person he once looked down on had risen to this position. What surprised him even more was that the reviews were far worse than expected. The audience was saying that the adapted plot had lost its original feel. That night, at the celebration banquet in the studio, Mr. Thompson approached me. He said, "Alex, we've uncovered the truth about the accident back then." Then he handed me a document stating that Christopher had ordered someone to tamper with the equipment. I looked at the document, which contained surveillance footage and witness testimonies. It turned out that the accident that day was a setup, aimed at forcing me out so that Christopher could take over the project and be with Olivia. He has now been ostracized by the industry. Mr. Thompson said that Olivia was also a victim. I closed the document. There was no need to say more. Let the past stay in the past. As I walked out of the hotel, Emily was waiting for me at the entrance. "Want to grab a late-night snack?" she asked with a smile, reminding me of my promise from back then. Looking into her clear eyes, I felt a wave of warmth. All these years, she's quietly supported my dreams without ever changing. "All right," I said, as I turned around. I saw Olivia standing nearby as if she wanted to say something but stopped herself. This time, I didn't stop. Some things, once missed, shouldn't be looked back on. The next day, I politely declined Mr. Thompson's invitation and decided to return to Japan. Before leaving, Emily saw me off at the airport. She reminded me to take care of myself. Looking at her, I suddenly asked if she wanted to come to Japan for work. "They need someone like you there." She paused for a moment, then understood what I meant and nodded with a smile. "That's great. I was just thinking about changing things up." Just then, a hurried figure ran over. "Alex, it was Olivia." I didn't answer the call. "Let's keep it as a memento between us." "Don't say that." Her voice was choked with emotion. "I know I was wrong. Please give me another chance." Emily took a step forward. "Olivia, once some mistakes are made, there's no chance to do them over." Olivia looked at Emily and suddenly smiled. "You've liked him all along, haven't you?" Emily nodded in acknowledgement. "Yes, I've liked him since college, but I won't be like some people and hurt him for the sake of an ex." Olivia's face turned pale. "What do you mean? How did Christopher know every detail of Alex's shots?" Emily said coldly, "Who gave his creative notes to Christopher in private?" I suddenly looked at Olivia. "Is that true?" Olivia panicked and said, "No, it's not what you think." I interrupted her. "There's no need to explain. So from the very beginning you've been helping Christopher against me." "That's not how it is," she cried while explaining. "I just wanted you two to work together." Just then, the airport announcement sounded, reminding everyone to board the plane. I dragged my luggage and turned to leave. "Wait!" Olivia suddenly pulled out a stack of papers from her bag. They were Christopher's notes, detailing how he had schemed against you. "But I don't need these." "I don't want to see them. Keep them for yourself." Emily caught up with me and asked if I needed a ride to security. I shook my head and told her to go back first. We'd see each other at the studio next month. She nodded with a smile, her eyes full of anticipation. As I passed by Olivia, I paused and told her to take care of herself. Tears welled up in her eyes as she sincerely apologized, saying she really didn't feel anything this time. At the studio in Japan, I started a new project. The theme of this project was rebirth, telling the story of a person who was betrayed and started over. After Emily arrived, she quickly became part of the team. Everyone recognized her professional abilities. More importantly, whenever I needed help the most, she was always there on time. One day while working overtime, she brought me a cup of coffee. She reminded me to be careful of the heat and pushed the cup toward me. I looked at the coffee and suddenly said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For always being by my side." She paused, then smiled. "Silly, isn't that what I'm supposed to do?" At that moment my phone vibrated. It was a message from China. Christopher had been permanently banned for plagiarism and fraud. Olivia, who was also involved, suffered a major blow to her career. Emily looked at the message and asked me if I regretted it. I shook my head. I didn't regret it. Some people are destined to be just passing guests while others. I looked at her and didn't finish my sentence, but she understood, and her face flushed slightly. Half a year later, our new work won an award at the International Animation Festival again. When we were receiving the award, I noticed Olivia in the audience. She had come for an interview for a production assistant position, but hadn't been successful. At that moment, I finally understood that the greatest revenge in life isn't to strike back, but to live better than others. After the award ceremony, Emily pulled me aside backstage. "I have a surprise for you," she said mysteriously. When the lights came on, I saw the walls covered with sketches of my work over the years. She said, "I've been collecting these all along because I believe that one day everyone will see their value." Seeing her serious expression, I felt a warm wave of emotion. True love isn't about intense possession. It's about silent support and perseverance. Just then, a senior colleague rushed into the studio, saying, "Alex, there's trouble." "What happened?" "Christopher posted a video online accusing you of plagiarizing his idea. He also attached some questionable evidence." I scoffed. I didn't expect him to be so stubborn. Emily immediately opened her computer to check the situation. There were already many comments under the video, with some people beginning to question my work. "Don't worry," I said. "True talent can withstand any test." However, the situation developed beyond my expectations. Christopher brought several former colleagues to testify, claiming that all the ideas for Starlight were his, and I was just a plagiarist. What was even more surprising was that Olivia also came forward to testify. She tearfully said on camera, "I'm sorry, I have to tell the truth. Those storyboards were all Christopher's directorial concepts." "Alex, the video spread quickly online, and my reputation has been severely damaged." Emily was trembling with anger. "This is so frustrating." I remained calm and opened my creative notes. "Help me pull up the date records," I said. She did as I asked, and I pointed to the dates, saying, "Look, these concepts and storyboards were all created before Christopher joined the team." I also opened another folder containing my university-era works, whose style and philosophy have never changed. Emily understood. "Oh, right. I still have all the reference emails you sent me back then." Soon, we compiled all the evidence. What Christopher didn't expect was that the team members who had participated in the production back then also came forward to speak out. "I can prove that all the original storyboards for Starlight were created by Alex. After Christopher joined, he actually undermined the integrity of the work. He doesn't really understand animation production. He just likes to boast about his own experience." The truth finally came to light, and Christopher's plan completely failed. Olivia lost all her opportunities in the industry because of her false testimony. That night, she sent me a text message apologizing, saying she had been forced to do it. I deleted the message without replying. Some people won't even give you the last bit of dignity. The next day, Emily came running over excitedly and said, "Guess what I found?" She opened her computer and found a surveillance video. The video showed that Christopher not only planned the accident but also tried to steal all my creative materials while I was in the hospital. "But he failed," Emily said proudly, "because I had already backed up all your materials." I was speechless. She lowered her head and said, "I always thought your work was precious and didn't want anyone to destroy it." Seeing her ears turn slightly red, I felt a wave of warmth in my heart. It turned out that even during my toughest times, someone had been quietly supporting me. At that moment, the senior members of the studio walked in. "Alex, we've decided to nominate you as director. You will also be in full charge of the new project. Please lead us well in the future." Looking at the sincere smiles around me and the happy Emily by my side, I suddenly realized that sometimes people leave to make way for us to meet better versions of ourselves. A year later, Emily and I's new work premiered globally and achieved tremendous success. At the premiere, I unexpectedly encountered Mr. Thompson. "I came to see my proudest student," he said with a smile. "By the way, I have something to tell you." It turned out that Christopher had engaged in improper conduct, including fraud and plagiarism, and was not only banned from working but also had to pay a large sum of money in compensation. His studio closed down, and all his projects were halted. Mr. Thompson sighed and mentioned that he had gone to a training institution in a small city. It was karma, I suppose. I remained silent. The person I once thought I would never forget now left me utterly indifferent. After the gathering, Emily pulled me to the rooftop. You remember what happened in college, she pointed at the stars, recalling how we discussed our dreams on nights like this. I smiled, thinking back to myself at that time. Back then, I always hoped to create something that would astonish the world. Now, looking at her, I thought about creating a touching story. Her eyes sparkled, reminding me of something, like a man who meets a girl who has always supported him. Emily blushed shyly, and I gently held her hand. Then, they began to weave their own beautiful story together. Just then, someone from the studio came looking for Alex and said, "There's good news. Disney wants to collaborate with us." Emily jumped for joy. "That's amazing, your dream." I interrupted her. "No, it's our dream." On the way home, I passed by a cafe and saw Olivia through the glass. She was sitting in the corner, flipping through an old sketchbook. On the cover was our wedding photo. At the time, I didn't feel anything special. I just held Emily's hand and kept walking. Some people eventually become others' memories. Some people walk with you toward a better future. In the studio, there's a photo frame on my desk. In the photo, Emily is intently adjusting the storyboards, her face adorned with a gentle smile. Next to it was the new scarf she had given me, with delicate stitches and a faint jasmine fragrance. Later, I realized that true happiness isn't about having something grand and intense, but about having someone by your side for a long time. Once, I thought I had lost everything. Now, I understand that this was actually a gift from life, allowing me to find a better version of myself and meet the person who has always been by my side. As night fell, Emily and I sat side by side in the studio beginning to sketch out the next story. Outside the window, stars twinkled, illuminating our future.